Hello everybody, welcome to another watercolor tutorial. We're going to be trying something a little bit different, a little bit fun this week, and we're going to try painting like a water droplet falling into water and then kind of creating that effect. So the easiest thing to do first is just look up a picture on the internet, like type in water droplet in water or something like that. And you will get so many options of pictures just like this one. And then you can choose the one that, speaks to you. I just chose a random one that looked fairly uniform. And what you want to do is just with a pencil lightly sketch out mainly the shape of that like triangular drop that comes up, and then some of the circular ripples around that drop. And once you have that down, we are going to first create sort of a wash to put as our background. And the reference picture that I'm using, it's a lot whiter on this side, and then as you move towards the right, it gradually gets darker and sort of bluer almost. Mine's kind of like a bluish green, but I just cannot be bothered to keep mixing the colors I need to create that color, so I'm not even gonna really bother trying to recreate the bluish green. So anyways, here I am just doing what I said I was gonna do, doing that wash. Oh my goodness, just like in a previous painting, there's all these fluffs, and it's because I don't paint for long periods of time, and I guess there's a lot of dust in my house because it settles on the paintbrush, it settles in my water. Actually, I'm gonna change out my water. So yeah, what happened there is the dust settled in my cup, and then when I filled it with water, it all mixed in and created all these dust particles, or not created, but I'm picking up all these dust particles now on my paintbrush, which is very annoying. It's very annoying. So like I said, as I move towards the right, I'm picking up more and more. Okay, so I'm picking up more and more blue, or like a darker blue, but mine is naturally a bluish green because I happen to mix the blue in where I had existing green on my palette, because I do not wash my palette as often as I should. Who has time for that? Seriously. You should have time for that. I should take care of my stuff a little bit better, but whatever. It's served me well for 3 years the way I treat it, so why should I do anything different? So, okay, that is barely visible, and I know that when that dries, that is really going to be barely visible. So I am going to try and darken that a tad. Particularly in this corner, that's kind of where that pigment is most concentrated. And my paper is doing that curling thing, and I know you guys have suggested, there was this past video of a moody forest painting, the same thing was happening, and you guys said to wet the back of the piece of paper first, which I have done, and that does work, but I didn't feel like doing it, and now I'm regretting it. It's funny because I think like 30 people commented the same thing, like the same suggestion. Like, oh, wet the back of the paper first. And I'm still getting comments like that on that video. So many, I think it's been like a year or two. And I laugh every time because I guess people don't read previous comments before, commenting. But it's very appreciated, the suggestions. But yeah, probably would be but whatever. I'm not gonna do it at this point because this is already wet, so I'm just going to leave this the way that it is. So I'm going to let this dry before we move on to our next step. Okay, so mine has dried, and just like I predicted, it dried too light. So I'm going back in and adding a second layer, trying to make it a little bit darker this time. And you know, I kind of messed up in my instructions, so even if your first layer was good, you shouldn't let it dry, because I kind of forgot that it needs to be wet for these next steps. So it's good that it wasn't the right shade for me in my case, because I needed to be wet anyway for the next portion of this painting. So that's about right. So I really want to prevent the pigment from caking on the bottom, because it then crawls back up on the sides. It's gonna do it anyway, but I try to wipe away the excess as much as I can. Anyway, I need to work a little bit quickly here. So what we're gonna do now, while that is wet, that's really important, you're going to take, you're gonna look at your picture, and you need to look at your picture, your reference picture, as rather than the individual details and what it is, look at it from a very objective and abstract viewpoint. And you have very dark features, and we're gonna paint those in specifically. So now you wanna paint just the features that are darker than your background wash that you just applied, but they're lighter than the darkest ripples around your painting. So I'm just mixing some colors together here. And actually I am going to incorporate green into my ripples. So I'm just painting them, trying to follow some of the ripple shapes that I penciled in the beginning. It's kind of hard to see some of my outlines now because of the background, but that's okay. So I'm not really following, I tried to start following the reference picture, but it's just turned too much into a blob. So right now I'm just kind of choosing random ripples to go over and hoping for the best. So again, I'm trying to concentrate the darker, or like the greener pigments on the darker side of my painting, because that's where they're most prominent on my painting. Sorry, on my reference photo. So that'll just do for now. So we're gonna let this dry completely, and then we're gonna, you know, move on to the part where we can start adding all the details that make it come together. Okay, so I think mine is dry. I hope it is. I can feel it's still a little bit damp, but I'm going to just mix my colors in the meantime, or not mix, but pick up my colors. So I am going to mix, sorry, we are mixing. I am mixing blue with black because that's what's on my picture, but yours, like I saw some pretty cool reference images when I looked it up. Some were rainbow. It just depends on the light in which the picture was taken. But I just kind of chose a very simple blue contrasty one. So I've mixed black with blue. I'm very nervous that this is too damp because if this spreads, it's going to totally ruin our very precise drop here. So I might have chosen, yeah, I'm going to switch paintbrushes. This one's a bit too thick. So I'm switching to my size quadruple 0, which is in the description if you want to purchase one yourself. So again, this just depends on your reference photo. I'm starting with that little volcanic looking drop because that will kind of set the tone for the rest of the painting, in my opinion. And that's the only thing that you really have to worry about, the detail, because everything else will be a lot more abstract. I am gonna do a little close-up here so you can see a bit better what I'm doing. Although when I do this, I tend to go off the camera view because I get way too into the painting and I forget that I'm painting. So again, this is going to depend on what your reference image looks like. And this is why I recommend choosing a monochromatic image, like just one color or two colors even, to make it easier for yourself. So my drop looks something like that. And then it's literally resting on a point. It's like a little volcano with a ball on top. So this side is a lot more faded than this side of my drop. Like it's more blended out, but I cannot be bothered to actually, I don't know, we'll see how I feel when I paint the rest of this. And there seems to be like this highlight going on over here that stretches up like this. And I have to be very careful here because I switched back to my size 1, or no, yeah, my size 1. And that's because if I use my quadruple to try and fill this in, it would take a very long time. So in fact, I think I'm gonna add a little bit more black to this because it is a lot more black in my reference image. So mine sort of, it has the line on the side, but it fades out and doesn't quite touch it. I just don't know how to create that effect. I'm gonna try. So I dipped a bigger brush into some water. It sort of looks like this. I'm just scared that this is gonna cauliflower. It's a lot darker than this, but man, I can't do everything. Mine does something like this. It like flares out. Again, I don't know what that is. And it does it on the other side as well. Kind of like that. I don't know what it is, but that's what it does in the painting. So you can see that I'm constantly switching back and forth here between my brush sizes, and that's just, you know, to suit whatever detail I'm painting. So you can, of course, do the same for your painting to get the control that you need wherever you are in your painting. So that's kind of what that volcano thing looks like. Now underneath, I guess it's like an under reflection. I don't even know what you would call that. You're more than welcome to just follow along with what I'm doing, by the way, if you don't want to look up a reference photo. But it would help, like, even if you're following my painting guide right now, you're just painting off of this, I still recommend that you look up a picture so you know what I'm painting when I go through each step, so that it's not, although you know what, sometimes it's better to just paint blindly and hope for the best. Like, I've done that before. And then you're surprised. You're like, oh wow, this actually turned out pretty darn good. But, so there seems to be, like I said, this, I don't even know what it is. It's like almost a reflection. But it starts to follow the pattern of the, you know, like the ripples. So I do sort of have to be careful here. This, by the way, was kind of intentional, like not intentional. These gaps here, this was just like me trying to fill it in, but I think I'm gonna leave them even though they're not like that in the painting. Because it looks a lot more realistic. Or it kind of adds to it, in my opinion. I don't know. Just do whatever you want. Do whatever seems to look good to you. I do want at least the outer edges to be smooth though, because, you know, this is water. So even though they can be irregularly shaped, they should still be smooth. All these details. So that's this weird reflection thing that's going on right below my my thing there, my volcano. So now I'm gonna move on to the ones kind of around it. So there's a very large one right underneath. Like I might even switch to a bigger paintbrush in a moment, because it goes all the way like this. Yep, so I'm gonna just switch to my size 8 so I can cover more area here, and it creates a much smoother stroke. And it becomes a lot more blurry on this side. So I'm gonna grab another paintbrush here. If I had another size 8, I would use the size 8. I just don't want to keep rinsing my brush because then I'm wasting pigment. So I've just picked up the next size up that I had, and I'm trying to blend that out because that's what it's doing in my painting, or sorry, in my reference photo. It does something like this. I'm going to try and add a little bit more color in there because it's not quite as dramatic of a transition. Oh my gosh, I don't even know if that was on camera. I'm gonna zoom out a bit so that I prevent that from happening. Okay. That looks all right. And it has, yeah, I even have a little pencil mark here. It's sort of, there's this blob that almost continues from this ripple, but it just kind of, it doesn't even curl all the way, it just stops there. Something like that. And then there's another blob that starts here and carries its way around. I am trying to maintain the darkness, but it's challenging. And then there's another one right underneath. And then my corner, so that's almost just completely black in this corner. I'm gonna try and darken these ripples a little bit to match that. Just add another one in there. Like this. So you don't want to, like on my photo, this is how many dark ripples there are, but you obviously don't want to exaggerate them. Like I have much more faded ones on mine, so which I should have added in that first layer while everything was still wet, but it's my fault. So now I'm trying to add them and it's not working out for me. Okay, and now, so the bottom half of mine is much darker than the top. The top doesn't have as many of these intense ripples. So they're very thin and a lot more sparse than on the bottom. So the ones that are at the top, like I said, they're a lot sparser and lighter, and it's just hard to achieve that when I don't want to keep rinsing my brushes. But there is a lot going on back here. Okay, so I've got most of the really dark features. These should be darker. I'm just going to darken these. Okay. So there are a lot more ripples up here, but they're much softer, and I do want to show that. So I am going to water that color down, and I'm going to try and paint more of these ripples like in and around the darker, oops. Okay. Okay, honestly, that is basically our painting. So the idea of this is to not look at this as like an entire painting, but rather breaking it down into like individual components. So like this triangle, this ball, this line, and when you look at the reference image or this painting in that way, it becomes a lot easier to paint. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this painting. If you did, please let me know what you think in the comment section. Hit like on this video, and of course don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.